Hello, everyone. This is Hilary Sloane. I'm a radio journalist and photographer in the Mojave Desert. Krista Tippett, one of my podcast idols, often talks about how the beginning of our lives affects the path of our lives. My early life memory is of being painfully shy and spending much time alone. I fantasized, created, and talked to inner beings and angels. As I grew up and am now firmly planted in my senior years, my propensity for inner dialogue grew and eventually merged with a productive external life. Today, amid political division and earthly challenges, I find my inner life to be my best guide forward. But that guide does not protect me from doubt, confusion, and the eternal question, why me, which way now, and how do I do this? This podcast, The Driftwood Conversations, sprung from those questions and curiosity about how others find their inner compass. How do we navigate the challenges? There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but I believe in living through the questions. How do you cope with illness? What did your relationships teach you? How do you stay positive in difficult times? These are the experiences that shape us. We can find common ground and learn from each other by sharing our stories. For this inaugural episode, I want to introduce you to my friend, Miri Hunter, a singer, performer, writer, and educator. I have known Miri since we both moved to the Morongo Basin. It was my first year and her first day. Through the years, I have seen her navigate many challenges up to and including severe recent health challenges with a pulmonary embolism and cancer. During this illness, in which the outcome was questionable, I never saw her deviate from her commitment to live life to its fullest. It's this commitment that makes her the perfect choice for my first interview. Miri and I are recording from my home in the desert and sharing a microphone. The last time Miri was in this room, I photographed her for her album cover. It was in the middle of her illness, and I was deeply concerned. Today, she is vibrant and healing. Miri, how did you get into the arts in the beginning? What age were you, and what were the influences?
I grew up and started out in my grandparents' house in Virginia, and my mother was one of 10, and everyone played a musical instrument and sang. And I think that had something to do with the fact that my grandfather on my mother's side was a Baptist minister who gave up actually the ministry at some point, and because he had 10 kids probably, and started working with the railroad. But he raised this beautiful family with my grandmother, and music was very important to that household. So that's where it began. And I remember at one point, I think I was 4, and I went to church with my mom, and there was a choir singing, and I kind of went, I want to be in the choir. And I don't know, I did at 4. Did I know what that meant? Probably not. But I guess they had like a nursery school choir and then a kindergarten choir, and then so I could kind of keep learning to sing the songs. So that was my first impetus was music. My parents, my mother was a big fan of country western music, and my dad had all of these 78 records that were all jazz and blues, and he played them all the time. And I personally am a fan of, Elton John, but I think that has something to do with the mix of influences that I have. When I was 9, I started classical piano. I wanted to play piano. So I started learning classical piano, and then I decided that I needed to be a singer again. So I took voice lessons. But I think in the world that I grew up in, it was sort of this pervasive thing of music that was just kind of always there. There was always music on. People were singing. And from there, at some point, I thought, well, I think I'll try auditioning for a show. And I got into the high school shows. And just, I feel like as I speak, this aura of art and music and theater and dance too were just sort of there, kind of in my space all the time. So how could I not be influenced by them and want to do them?
Art was always around the house. The arts defined us in a way, but it defined us in a separation. It was like, I always grew up thinking I'm different. I'm an artist. I didn't fit in. And I had that feeling for a long time. Did you have that?
No, I actually did not have that feeling. I studied theater and music, dance. I studied all those things, but I never actually thought of myself as an artist until I moved to the desert. So that's interesting. But I think that also had to do with the idea that in order for me to even do music, art, whatever, I had to have something else that I was doing to pay bills. I think I thought of myself more as an academic because I did a lot of teaching and I did a lot of studying. And that was another thirst. And I'm trying to figure out as I speak how the academic, the intellectual side fits in with the creative side. And why I always thought of myself as an academic and not as an artist when I was doing all these artistic things. I don't know. But once I got to the desert, it was like, okay, I'm an artist now.
So the desert you're talking about is Joshua Tree. And that's when I met you on almost day one. And we were both figuring out our new lives. Everything was new. We had come from Los Angeles and other places before that. And the desert Joshua Tree offered different environment, different opportunities, a different way to see ourselves. So where did that take you?
Interestingly enough, when I came to the desert to rest after being in LA, I envisioned my life as being solitary and alone. Just me and my books, reading, not writing, just reading. But when I got to the desert and stayed here and maybe got through a year of having to go through a year of being in the desert, things sort of started to oh, no. You meet this person, you met that person, you meet this person. Oh, you can go here, you can go there. Oh, you've got time. Why don't you go do this? Oh, you want to paint? Oh, here. And somehow the desert has this thing of, has this thing of opening you up maybe more to more of who you are. That's what happened. And I always go back to, or I always think about bringing in some of the spirituality of the desert. It's like a lot of things happen to a lot of people in the desert. And if you're part of the Abrahamic tradition, all your leaders were in the desert and got their awakening in the desert. So there is something about the desert. I mean, it didn't happen in Malibu Beach, although that is a great place to be. Things happened in the desert, and is it because there's not a lot of other stuff to preoccupy you with that you become able to know yourself better?
I think that is exactly what it is. And a lot of people write about it. There are all sorts of books about finding yourself in the desert, not just from a biblical or a spiritual perspective, but artists and writers. There is physical space. And for me, it felt like it took me 2-3 years before I really found the beginning of my tribe, people I could hang out with. And before that was just exploring. I picked up my camera and I started to go places and what is this place about? This desert living here is all a part of you. How would you describe where you are now in your artistic, creative life?
When I first got here, of course, it took, like I said, a year to find things. But then I found a lot of things. So I found music, and I found a band, and I found theater, and I started a company, and I did a festival, etc. So I was really busy. But then there came this point where I couldn't be busy anymore because I'd gotten really ill. So in the time of when I was very ill, I couldn't move, I was in a wheelchair. I can laugh now, but not then. In that time, the time after that, which is now, I've come back to being slower, which I think is actually an energy that the desert gives you. And the busyness that I had before was great, energetic, but that time has passed. And so now there's an opportunity for me to be more inward. And I like that.
Does this time of reflection and quiet feel like it works for this time in the world too?
Yeah, maybe. Here is the other thing about that is that having given out so much, I think the only way for humanity, I'll speak for me, to grow is to come in to myself, to take time to focus on me instead of trying to do a huge thing for whoever. Because healing of ourselves and of the planet, if I personally have not gone through, looked at my stuff, healed, nurtured myself so that I have strength and energy, I talk about how we need to evolve as human beings, and I also talk about this thing where, a lot of people get sick and some people don't make it through the sickness. But I think if you make it through, there's a reason you made it through. And that is part of having more time to evolve, because the older we get, the more we can evolve. When you're young, we know this, when you're young, you do all these different things, you're learning, you're exploring, but are you actually taking the time to find out what your purpose is? Because there's so many things that pull you. And I think when you've had the time to stop or be stopped, you kind of see, well, I didn't really need that. And I didn't really need that. Really, all I need is this. And I need to do this now. And I actually think that's what wisdom is. It's like giving yourself, not being selfish, but saying there's something more here than just doing. There's something about learning from your internal wisdom, tapping into your internal wisdom. And I think we can't do that when we're young because there's too many things to do, right? There's a whole world out there. But when you're older, there's a wisdom to going, yeah, I could go to Europe for 6 months and explore, or I could sit in my house, I could write, I could be with nature, I could explore me, or I could connect to something. I think that's where we start connecting to something more than ourselves. And I think that's part of the evolutionary process for humanity.
Well, it's a process. It feels like it's a process of exploration. Would that be right? Where you discover yourself and you discover what you're thinking, and maybe it's a give and take within yourself.
Within yourself, yes. It's definitely a give and take within yourself, but in that give and take within yourself, that's when you're tapping into something else.
What do you think that is?
And I think that is, maybe you could say it's, my ancestors talking to me. Maybe you're saying it's God talking to me. Maybe it's an internal awakening of spirit that you have from past lives, that type of wisdom. But I think it's not something that we need. It is something that we need, but it's not something that comes from outside of us. It's a connection to whatever I think you think divinity and spirituality is.
That's such an important issue for me, that it's not outside. And I think when we're younger, what I've experienced when I was younger, is I'm always was looking for the next teacher, the next person, the next philosophy, the next book. And at one point, none of that really could get close enough to what I was discovering internally.
I totally agree with that, because I went through that same thing of does this work? Is this one working? Who's this? How come I don't know? Where's my teacher? I think because we're taught that we have to have a teacher from outside of ourselves. Someone also teaches that we have already everything we need, right? And so we have to listen to ourselves and tap into that. But then, you get to going, is that me or am I going crazy? Is that a voice in my head, or is that, what is that? But why can't it just be, and we can just be with it and explore it?
It might be both. It's internal, but it's also a little crazy. The living in the world, being human, is a bit crazy. Some days your emotions are flying all over the place. You don't know what you're angry at, or what you're in love with, or what you want. Or at least that's my experience. And then the next day if I don't try to run out of it, if I don't try to mask it, if I don't try to get away from it, if I keep coming back to my center, then it quiets down. And then something else is exposed or that I get to discover about myself in my life.
Yeah, centering. I wanted to go like 6 places with that. Too much outside. One day you're doing this, one day you're doing that. The next day you need to be internal. There's so many things out there trying to pull us away from ourselves. I think that's where I wanted to go. Computers, advertising, this, that, people, experiences, everything is trying to pull us away from our center. And so even the idea that if I were to take an hour and do like a yoga class for an hour and that will change my life if I did that every day, that's only an hour of a day. But the other 23 hours or whatever, we're getting pulled in every direction. And still, it's very hard for us maybe to take an hour because we're like, if I take an hour just to do this, I won't do that, I won't do that, I won't do that. But I find that if you just take that hour and do that practice, everything else suddenly falls into place. And everything you were worried about before that hour, it's going to still be there. So why not give yourself that vacation if you can? Even I say an hour, but 10 minutes. We're not taught that. And we're also taught that everything is out there. We're also taught that God is out there. Everything is out there. And it's okay to go out there, but what about, weren't we created? And I was taught that we were created in the image of divinity, right? And so if I am the daughter of divinity and I'm sharing that mind with divinity, I already have everything. Maybe I forgot. Maybe being in a third dimension body, I have to go through stuff to get back. I don't know, but it's something for me and where I am in my lifetime to think about. Like, I want to open up to what else is out there, but the rest of the world is saying, no, don't do that. You need somebody else to be your intermediary. You need this, you need that. But I don't know, do I? Do we?
That feeling of going in and being quiet, isn't that also the core of artistic creation?
Yes. I find that I find joy in going through a creative process. But I also find in going through that creative process and trying to open to that is not always easy. And sometimes it's a struggle. And sometimes I'll just take, for example, if I'm writing a song and I'm like, what's the next line? And I'm saying, I don't want to be in this energy. It's taking too long. There's still a struggle because I don't know how much of me wants to be here in this time on this planet in this body, and how much of me wants to experience something else. And can I do both at the same time? And I think the creative principle, the creative energy is that other thing opening up, and it might not always be pleasant. And it might be a struggle, but it might sometimes it's just sort of this bliss feeling happens, right? You're like, oh my gosh, this is just flowing happens. I like that feeling.
That wave of struggle to bliss is what life is for me. It's always, you go through a phase where everything's working. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves you. You love everybody. Your clothes fit. You're not too heavy. You don't have to struggle giving up anything. And you feel like it'll never stop. Oh, I'm always going to make money. I'm always going to have this job. I'm always going to have this boyfriend. And then all of a sudden, it stops. It shifts. It changes. What I experience now is a deep place of discovery. How do I stay in a blissful place, not out of it, but peaceful place, a peaceful place with those periods of time that are not comfortable? How do I come into harmony when the outward is not harmonious?
I think that's the practice of being a human being because I think, if you embrace the Buddhist concept, the only constant is change. I find that if I'm in a state of where's this not coming from? Why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting that? If I remember physically in my body where that feeling of what a great life I'm having is, and just try and remember that, it lessens the angst and the anxiety of like, why isn't it happening? Because in the moment that I'm sitting there going, why isn't this happening? I'm still alive and breathing. I don't know what else. Without that, all of this other stuff doesn't even matter. So I think remembering what's important, what did feel good. So in those moments when it doesn't, because there will be those moments, if I can touch back into what those feelings were, then I can get through. So you don't have to go there. I think this is a yoga thing that you don't have to be all the time feeling blissed out, but kind of feeling balanced. So for me, it wouldn't be so much about always feeling the bliss, maybe remembering what felt really great, but in the present moment, can I be here and be present? And just remember, just be here and be present, because the moment changes.
Do you have a spiritual practice?
I've had many. I'm just kidding. Right now, my practice is yoga. And I have done yoga for years at moments, and then not done it in all different types. But right now, I am really going with this yoga practice that I've discovered, and I love it. And it's hard. It's a power yoga. I feel like I try to do an hour. Sometimes I do 45 minutes, but I try to at least do an hour a day. And I've noticed just in the past couple of months, like my whole way of thinking and being present has changed. Just the simple way of the instructor saying, wow, this is a difficult pose, breathe. Because if you can breathe through this pose for, however long this pose is, you can breathe through anything in your life. And I go, yeah, probably true. So it's coming back to that practice, and maybe it's because I have done yoga before, and I'm coming back to it with a different mindset. I'm understanding it at a deeper level, and I've been able to practice the principles of breathing, so important, more now at this stage of my life.
So I know you went through a very difficult physical ailment. Do you think, and you're coming back to the yoga now shortly after that, do you think the yoga is helping you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, because it makes me breathe deeply, and that's important. I learned one of the things I had at that point when I was really ill was a pulmonary embolism when I couldn't breathe. So the importance of breathing and working on your breathing and keeping your breathing flow, keep that, how important that is your life force. And I get it. I mean, not that I didn't get it before, but I think we take breathing not as seriously. I mean, we have to do it, but I think for the practice of deep breathing is not enough in the world or in our culture. So yes, the yoga has definitely helped, and it's helped me strengthen my body, because I was at one point so weak. I couldn't sit up. I was carried. It was horrible as I left. But now I'm seeing, my body strength coming back, but coming back in a different way, which is also very interesting for me to watch.
So I'm sitting next to you for this conversation, and you do not look like you have been through what I know you went through, because I saw it. I saw you at some point during that.
Yes.
Your radiance and your life force, you do not look like you've gone through it. But I suspect that that's in you anyway, the ability to be in very serious, maybe even life-threatening or challenging, extremely challenging situations throughout your life, and keep going back to your center and discovering that you still want to be here, that you still want to create, that you have something more to say. Am I right?
I think you're on point with that. This is where I'm going to correct you.
Okay, by all means.
Yeah, but because before that illness, there were moments when I'm like, what am I doing here? And I'm like, I just want to go home, and home being like, out there in the cosmos. So I want to like leave the body and go. And that's where I was. And because I was thinking things aren't working, it's not happening. Things I don't even know. It was just crazy. I'm like, why am I here? And it wasn't just about the physical body. It was just like all of the things, the country was changing. There was this. I kept thinking, I am a Black woman in this world, an older Black woman in this world. And like, I'm really kind of tired of all the bullshit. But it's there. And every morning I have to get up and I have to deal with aggression and microaggressions and all of this. I'm going, why am I here? And I always still said, why did I choose, if I chose, if you believe in that concept, to be this person at this time? I said to my partner, I said, why did I just choose just to be a white woman with blonde hair? Why didn't I choose that? Why am I choosing this? And I never knew, and I still don't know. But those are questions I was asking before I got sick. And then I got ill, I got through it and everything. And then when I was recuperating, because I was thinking, even when I'm lying in the bed here for these many months going, what am I doing? There was never a moment when I was sick that I wanted to die. And I actually thought once I got well, that was very interesting. I thought, Miri, you wanted to die before. And suddenly when you realize the magnificence of having a life on this planet, to being able to experience, when I got stronger, I would walk, I would hike up into the mountains that are near the house, and I would just sit on a rock, and I would be going, I wanted to leave this. I wanted to leave this beautiful blue planet, this beautiful sky, these solid rocks. I wanted to leave my body, which is maneuvering me now. It was like my body got sick for a while in order to get stronger. And my mind opened. And I kept thinking, you want to go where? No, we want to be here. I'm still not quite sure why. But even if it's just to have a moment of feeling an open heart, is that enough to change anything? Is my life enough? Is that moment in my life to experience that type of love energy? Is that enough to change something? Is it having written, a song after I've been not able to hold a guitar for so many months, and to put that song out, was that the purpose? And couldn't that be enough? I don't know what is enough. I mean, I think the strength that you keep seeing, I go, those are ancestors. Those are my grandmothers. It's my mother saying, well, what are you going to do? Not keep going? Of course you're going to keep going. And I feel like I have an obligation to keep going because the people before me kept going. So it's not as if, in a way, you get to go, okay, I'm tired. I don't get to do that because I am part of a long line of people that didn't stop. For whatever reason, I'm here. And so I think I have a responsibility to not stop.
That's a whole conversation one could go on, but I do want to say something. So during your illness, my partner and I photographed you.
Uh-huh.
And when you came in, you were so thin.
Oh.
And so sick. Well, you still had stamina. When you came in for us to photograph you, you still had a vitality. And I was going through some questioning about my life. And when I was looking at the pictures a couple days later, there was a choice there to stay or not stay. Mm-hmm. That's what we saw. We didn't know how to quite understand it. You were having photographs taken for your album.
Yeah.
And then I saw you at an event and you were talking about producing a play. Mm-hmm. You hardly could stand up.
That's true.
But you were still creating. You had this goal of producing a play. Some of the struggle we all have, humanity, but also as artists, is wanting our creations to take a form, to be accepted, to make money, to win awards, to take forms, whatever those forms are. And that doesn't always happen. But the people that I've grown to admire, who have affected me very deeply, And you say, why are you here? You've affected me. You've influenced me, because in those subtle transmissions from human to human, from friend to friend, is I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep giving, and I'm going to keep loving, and I'm going to have all this creativity keep coming out of me. And you can do the same if you want to. Come along or don't.
Yeah, I'm going to like that. Come along or don't. But, and thank you for saying those kind words. Yes, I remember that. But I think if I didn't have the drive to create, I would have died. Because if I didn't have something to keep going for, it would have been another one of those like, well, why are you here? But setting those goals of, let's say, we're going to the recording studio. I know you can barely sing, but I'm going anyway, right? Or I'm going to do this play, or I'm going to be part of this project. That actually kept me alive. And without that, and I think that's important when you don't have a creative something in your life. It's like, well, why am I? But when you have something that's driving you, and I also had a very, very supportive partner. And he was like, well, what do you need? What do you need? How can I help? What do you need? But to have that, and also kind of knowing that I was that important to somebody else. And it was hard for him. And of course, it was hard for me. But like to know that there was somebody out there really rooting for you. So I had that from my partner, and I had that from like other musicians, and I had that from just friends checking in. And I think without that, it's like, there's a sense of why bother. I'm doing my life now with the adjustments I had to make.
Everything you have been talking about, I would call love. And what I'm thinking is that it's the creative force, the desire to create. It's a desire to connect. And that, for me, it's a love force. It's connecting to people, to nature, to the universe, to the planet. There's a connection. What would you say to somebody that isn't driven by the artistic motivation? They can find that source too. It's there in all of us.
Yeah, that creative force it's in all of us. It's our life energy. We can go, in fact, it's part of our sexual energy and our sexual drive. But you don't have to be an artist. I mean, raising a family, that's very creative. Creating the road system. So all of those things, there's so many things that are creative. Working with your hands, carpenters, plumbers. There's a lot of things that we separate out the painter from someone who's doing something, who's raising a family, but like it all takes that creative energy. I think that without it, we actually die faster. So having something that sparks us, whether it's taking care of another person, or whether it's finishing a song, or memorizing lines for a show, or running a marathon, you need not so much a goal, but you need an experience that reveals who you are. And I think that's what creativity is. So that could be being a mom, it could be being an academic professor, but it's something that reveals who you are. And as a society, I think we are so busy separating things out that we're not, again, seeing the whole picture of what creativity is.
That made me very thoughtful. And actually, I kind of lost words there for a moment. But I love it. I love that we've connected. We've connected over time. Sometimes we don't see each other, sometimes for years, even though we're in the same place. And it doesn't really matter. We can pick up again, and that connection is much deeper because it's based on something that isn't of the physical necessarily. I don't like you because you're any specific thing. I like you because it's your heart. Our heart's connected. And we've had over the years really deep conversations and communication. And that's my hope for this whole planet. is that we can connect. That's my hope for this podcast. That if I connect with you, somebody listening may connect with a piece of what we're talking about. And then I believe it's beyond the physical. They could carry that and connect with someone else and have a moment's conversation that's bigger and deeper and beyond the small and the physical. Years ago, when I was living in New York and I was reading a book on alchemy, it was just this funny thing that happened. It was cold and I was all bundled up and I was on the subway. And this young man got off of the train and I'm sitting on the bench and he sits next to me. And there was something about his physicality that I believe he had some challenges. And he approached me. I didn't know how to respond. And what he said was, alchemy. I love it. Can I talk to you about it? It was the most out of the blue kind of conversation. And we sat there a half hour talking about alchemy. I don't know his challenges. We never met again. I didn't even get his name. But some spark of connection happened. And I walked away changed. Not in any way that I could explain. Well, maybe I can explain it. I was bigger. Was a little bigger than myself. And again, that's my hope for the podcast, my hope for my life. And now I'm letting go of that need to be anything outside. And it's more about the connections, more about the moment, about those sparks that happen. Sometimes it's when I'm cleaning the house. And sometimes it's when I'm just sitting alone. And they're beautiful. And if I can pass on those moments to other people, even if they're not physically around me, or if they are, that's life to me. And I forget about that. I get caught up in I'm not good enough, or I have to learn more, or I have to do more, and I forget. So connecting with someone else or watching you, it reminds me.
Yeah, I've had those experiences connecting. I don't know. It's so interesting to me, and if I can spark someone, thank you, that's beautiful. I appreciate that, saying that, because again, you say that to me and it's a reflection of like me going, I don't know what I'm doing here. And you saying that to me is like, oh, I gave a little spark to someone. And then I go, oh, and that, I think that gets reflected back to me and the heart opens. I think that's how that works. So thank you. People we don't know that just come up and say hello. Maybe they're little bodhisattvas, and maybe that moment we needed it. And I think those moments come when we're not expecting it, but when we need it. I've had moments of just, sitting in a rock, and it filled me so that I could go back and have a beautiful day, or sitting on that rock and crying, and knowing that the rock can take that energy and can cry and can hold you. So I'm wondering if these little sparks and moments are these things that hold us. And it's like arms, like mother's arms, and say, hey, you're doing great, kid. And here's a little, a little boost for you. Keep going. And I wonder if that's what those moments are. Are there some moments where we're sitting in a meditation or something and you just sort of feel your heart open? It's like, yeah, you could irradiate it out, but like, it's your heart. Don't forget to give something to yourself. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Is to help spark other people to become to their full potential? Isn't that part of how humanity can evolve past where we are right now?
Yes and no. Because what makes those moments happen is we were present for them. When we're fussing and crying, and if we're present even in that, then the sparks happen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the reason I said no is I don't know that we're here to give anything except to ourselves, and then we give everything. It's nice to do things for people. It takes you out of yourself. We can't expect anything from that.
No.
We don't know if it'll do anything.
No.
So if we're just enlightened, sparking in love and with the moment,
Yeah.
that does more than anything.
I think it's about being alive in the moment, because it's not necessarily when you're in the, blissed out. It could be at anything. But if you're alive in whatever it is you're going through. So when I was really, really, really sick, I was alive in that moment. So if that encouraged or didn't encourage or sparked somebody, whatever, I had no clue because I could just be in that moment. Or whether it's like when you're performing and you touch someone in the audience, and maybe I'm a little bit more aware that I'm trying to do that, but like I still have to be aware in what I'm presenting as a performer. So I think, yes, you have to be really, truly present with what you're doing. And you don't even have to know if you're sparking somebody. You don't have to know, and you probably don't know. And the rest takes care of itself. But it's getting to that moment. And that's
the work. Yeah. So I want to say, Miri Hunter, thank you.
Thank you, Hilary Sloane.